This Week in Startups is brought to you by Klaviyo is the e-commerce marketing platform that helps brands build relationships with memorable email and SMS messages. Today, more than 50,000 brands like Living Proof, Hint, and Chubbies choose Klaviyo to help them grow. Learn more and get started with a free trial at klaviyo.com/twist. That's KLAVIYO.com/twist. SendPro Online from Pitney Bowes. Save time and money no matter what you ship or mail. Try it free for 30 days and get a free 10-pound scale when you visit pb.com/twist. And Fiverr. Find the perfect freelance services for your business. Go to fiverr.com and use code TWIST to receive 10% off your first order.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to This Week in Startups, a podcast that I've been doing for over a decade now. And this podcast would not have ever occurred, nor would, I believe, Twitter, if it wasn't for today's guest. And so you're saying, hey, is Jack on the program maybe? Or Ev Williams? Who's on the program today? Well, no. A friend of mine from New York, originally from Queens. I'm from Brooklyn. So I think there's like a mini rivalry there. And his name is Dave Weiner. And he is a software developer, entrepreneur, thinker. What do you go by, Dave? Welcome to the program.
A inventor of new media types.
Love it. Inventor.
Sort of the big circle that everything is inside of, is that my whole thing is I love creating new media types, and I have developed all the skills that I need to do that. And that's what I like to do. That's what I like to learn about. That's what I like to think about and write about and talk about, So it's a great time to be alive for that, because there's been an awful lot of media being created. And I don't agree with you that I am responsible for Twitter.
Well, I bring it up because I remember we met in the aughts, I guess, in the 2000s. And there were a bunch of us in our, let's call it early 30s, trying to be entrepreneurs in media. And you had pioneered RSS, OPML, and RSS as a technology had attachments. And I distinctly remember you and Adam Curry and some other folks saying, hey, if you attach a file to an RSS feed, really simple syndication, you could have kind of like this automatically downloaded experience of the attachments. And the attachments, I believe, could have been anything. And that's really was the origin point of podcasting, correct? Do I know my history correct?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, it wasn't people like to say that, it's the technology, but I don't think it really was. It was figuring out how to get people to do it. And, it's I know this is about startups, and this is not exactly a startup, but it's very similar process. You have this great idea, and it was actually a pretty great idea, especially at the time, because the networks were so slow that, that when you saw, an audio file or a video file or whatever, and you clicked on it, you would have to wait a very long time for it to come down, and the quality wouldn't be very good. And, people were saying, this audio video stuff, that's just not for me. I don't want that. But the insight that Adam actually had was that, that if you do the download in the background, before the user even knows that the audio or video even exists, then you've gotten rid of what he called the click wait problem, because you'll click and it'll start playing right away. And because it's all done in the background, it could be very high resolution. And so, there'd be no loss of fidelity. But, I figured at the time, we'll just put this idea out there and everybody will see it, because I had a very popular blog at the time. I had actually the top blog at the time. And So it was a very good way to get ideas out there, but really nothing happened. And then we had to figure out ways how to tease this out of people. How are we going to get them to actually start doing it? And that was an iterative process that took, I would say took 4 years before there were actually, before there was a serious base of podcasts being developed. And I learned a lot in that process. People have to feel that it's something that they can do. And so if you throw a lot of great production values at it, which is the first instance we tried doing, with Chris Lydon, when I was at Harvard as a research fellow. And, Chris is this NPR guy and, very, he's got this incredible NPR voice. And he did all these great interviews with early bloggers and some of the, people that have gone on to create this whole world. And it was great stuff, but it didn't give people the idea that they could do it because, nobody listened to his stuff and thought, well, okay, I'm like an NPR god, But, and so then I started doing them myself and I had no production quality to it whatsoever. And I just never edited anything and I just put it up and threw it on my blog. And that's when people got the idea they could do it because I sounded like any schmuck doing this stuff and,
Well, there is something to that, making this technology accessible and allowing people to feel like they didn't need an editor. And I think that was kind of the specialness that blogging had as well. You were one of the first bloggers, and you created RSS essentially, correct?
I would say that the starting the blogging was by far the more important of the two. RSS wouldn't have had anything to do if it weren't for blogging. And it was an outgrowth of blogging. And there were a few other people that were doing similar things at the same time. It was Justin Hall and
Bud.com.
Sorry?
He was doing Bud.com?
That's right, Bud.com.
Bud.com. Justin Hall was basically talking about his life in a very raw...
He was great. Well, that's part of what blogging is about. It's just, they make the jokes about it, but that really is what it is. It's like, what does the world look like to you today from your point of view? That's blogging. And there was also the What's New page on Mozilla.com or I think Netscape.com or whatever. The idea was out there. And I started doing it was just sort of like this epiphany. I had nothing to do. My company we basically shut down my second company and I was just, looking for ideas really. And it just hit me one day that, I had all these great email contacts and why don't I just start sending them some of my ideas that nobody wanted, I was always knocking on people's doors saying, you should do this and you should do that. And we should get you working with, because this is the way, it's like, and of course everybody said, yeah, thanks very much. But, we'll figure this out. And so I had this whole backlog of, ideas that nobody had bought, but they were still good ideas. And so I started publishing them through my email channel. And then I got involved in the San Francisco newspaper strike of 1994. And that was when the web hit me really hard. I was already aware.
What was that? I'm not even aware of what that was.
Well, it was this incredible sort of confluence of opportunity, I guess you'd say. I remember exactly where I was. I was in my car, going to the supermarket. I was listening to Bruce Coons, who was, I think, managing editor of the San Jose Mercury. He was on the radio and he was talking about this newspaper strike they were about to have in the Bay Area. And, I knew him because, I was a software entrepreneur and, we ran in kind of the same circles. So when I got home, I called him. I said, Bruce, you're going to do a website for this thing? He says, yeah, we really want to do a website. So I said, well, let me do the website. And so he said, yeah, sure, go for it. And, Jason, these are the moments when you have to strike, when people are open to new ideas. Because if I'd called him 2 weeks earlier and said, hey, let's do a website, he'd say, well, yeah, you got to talk to our operations guys and, they got to blah, blah, blah. And, the door is closed. It's not open, right? But at this moment, it was wide open, and I knew absolutely nothing about the web. So I had to learn and found some good teachers. And then I hooked up with Chris Gulker, who was doing the management paper at the San Francisco Examiner. And I knew Chris because he was a customer of mine and was using my software. And it was a friend. And so I got in touch with him and I said, I see you guys are doing the management paper. How would you like to work with us on the strike paper? And he said, sure, which was one of the big ironies of it because we were just sharing code back and forth. He was working for the management. We were working for the strikers. And it was one of those moments where just so much progress was made in such a short period of time. And we had all of the journalists of the day were feeding stuff to us from around the country because the strike was a big deal. And you know what the strike was about? This is really funny. The strike was about automation, and they were against it.
Oh, really?
Yes, they were striking.
Oh, they were trying to fight against automating what, like word processors or printing technology?
All the things we were using to publish the paper. And it was the strike in support of the people who drove the trucks that carried the papers around, the area. But, the writing was on the wall, right? I mean, at the time, very, very clear.
Yeah.
And this was Silicon Valley. And of course, the people
that's actually the paradox is great there. It's like you were building a web page to support the strike, and the web eventually would result in, the biggest challenge the newspapers ever felt, right?
No, they were aware that it was happening right then. I mean, and it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was all coming together.
If you're an e-commerce based business or have direct-to-consumer products, well, then you've got to get Black Friday and Cyber Monday perfect. That's on your mind. It's coming right up. Well, don't sweat it because Klaviyo is here to help you. Klaviyo is the ultimate e-commerce marketing platform for online brands of all kinds and sizes. They do email automation, SMS marketing, which is super effective these days, growth tools, analytics, and you'll get everything you need to build a really strong relationship that keeps your customers coming back. And that's what it's all about. And with the holiday season right around the corner, there's no time like the present. So get up and running quickly with Klaviyo's flexible automations, powerful insights, and super precise personalization. And that super precise personalization is what it's really all about. Whether you're a billion-dollar business or you're just starting out, Klaviyo is the e-commerce marketing platform for growth during this incredibly important holiday season when, let's face it, people are not going to stores. They're going online. So this is the year to really get it right. So get a free trial at klaviyo.com/twist. Let me spell that for you. KLAVIYO.com/twist. Get it all dialed in now before that holiday season. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode.
Out of all of that came a product called AutoWeb that I came out with in I think it was January of 95. And you see, because Jason, that's what I wanted to do. It's sort of like this, you create the necessity for the software you want to develop. You learn all about the application by doing it by hand. And then once having done it, you have a very good idea about how to codify that, how to turn that into code. And so AutoWeb came out, and that was like the first static site generator, came out of that project in early 95. And then we got on this path that led to, in 96, 97, 98, every time another iteration on the software that was, the whole idea was to, web publishing at the time was, thought to be, you hire somebody to do your web publishing, right? I remember I was friends with the people at Kleiner Perkins at the time because I had joined up with one of their companies, sold my first company to them. And I went to them and I said, I could make it so that you could edit your own your website, the Kleiner website. And they said, well, we don't want to do that, but I said, yeah, you will eventually want to do that. And of course they do, right? But so it was a whole sequence of things until we hit on edit this page. And that was the big breakthrough. So we realized that the problem was that we needed to get all the different views of a website to come into one single place. And then you click that button. When you see something that's wrong, you click the edit this page button, you make the change and hit submit. That was as quick as you could make it. And from there, blogging just took off because we had found the simple.
And there was also like a lot of friction, I remember, in people's minds that should people be able, or should journalists be able to publish without an editor? That was everybody's big mental block, I think, in why they didn't adopt it. So when Nick Denton and myself and some other folks sort of came into the space, Peter Rojas, the idea, O'Malley, was like, wait a second, these journalists, and we had been journalists and run publications in print. Well, wait a second, you're going to give Rafet or Ohm or Peter Rojas or Elizabeth, whoever it was, the ability to publish to the website without an editor reading it.
Right.
That kind of blew people's minds.
Yes, that was a huge deal.
At that time.
I hit that one. My initial blog became kind of phenomenon in the Valley, and everybody was reading it. And I got a call from Louis Rossetto at Wired, and went down there, and he offered me a job right then on the spot to be a contributing editor for Wired. And of course I took it, right? Because Wired, was another one of these juggernauts. And I loved the idea of Wired, of taking, up to that point, it was all like nerds. And I thought, well, let's make this easy for human beings. And so I had an editor right from the start, but I loved my editor. She was wonderful. But then eventually they gave me an editor that I hated and that was it. Got to get out of there.
Yeah.
And so, it hit. But on my blog, absolutely. Yes. It was like you had the full, in a news organization where you have an editor, you can always like sort of blame somebody else for the shit that happened, for the, mistake that you made. But if it's your thing, that's it. When you press the button to publish it, that's it. It's your ass that's on the line right there. And, but that's also the thrill of it, and it's the power of it. And I think we've kind of we've adjusted to that, right?
Yeah, the non-edited has made its way all the way from this time in the 90s to a president who's unedited and who just tweets anything. And we start to see what, perhaps a really flawed, bad-intentioned person's not having a filter and communicating with tens of millions of people do. We hit this crazy edge case, right?
Maybe not an edge case at all. Maybe it was the foregone conclusion that this is where we were going. At that time, everybody was very idealistic about it and honestly couldn't see the downside of it. I thought at the time, all the news organizations are just like, they're making the same mistake over and over again, and we can't get out of the rut that we're in, but we're solving the problem because we'll be able to route around them. You remember that idea, right? It's like, they're the gatekeeper.
Yeah, sure. We'll
route around them. Well, now we are in 2020, and we know what the outcome was, and they're still the gatekeepers. They like to put the blame on Facebook, but it's really, the responsibility is theirs. The things that people say on Facebook, they come from the news media. And, maybe parts of the news media that other parts don't like, but it still is where it's coming from. A lot of the discourse you see on Twitter and Facebook is just like what you saw on CNN the night before. They're just repeating the same old talking points, So it's not the panacea at all that we thought it was.
Yeah, we did have the sense that we were going to enable all of these great voices to have a voice, and that more voices equaled better.
Yeah.
And then when you level the playing field like that, then all of a sudden you get conspiracy theorists or hate groups or Proud Boys, and then even this one that I think is even more pernicious, maybe is the word, or bad, having terrible intent and hard to control, which is the anarchists. You really have this contingent of people who, I guess they call it shit posting, or let's just create chaos. And then that, of course, allows somebody to come into an open platform like Twitter or Facebook and just back into the algorithm and say, you know what, let's buy ads in rubles and create chaos in America. And that could be the Chinese, it could be the Russian ops, or it could just be useful idiots in America who are just helping them amplify their message. Do you have any thoughts about that? I wonder, and solutions?
I don't think I have any solutions for it. I mean, I think we have to create new, go back to the beginning. We have to create new media types that are resistant to that. This sort of total level playing field that we have on Twitter, we know where that goes. It's better than earlier, ways of communicating, like mail lists were completely out of control. I mean, all the trouble we had with RSS, it's all because we used mail lists for it and gave everybody, even people who had no stake whatsoever in the medium, were controlling it, so that wasn't good. And what we have with Twitter isn't good either. But what we do need, and I feel very strongly about this, is the political parties need to become social networks, and less emphasis on discussion, because we know where discussion heads, where that goes, and more on, action and organization and mobilization, so that, let's say, I don't actually know where you are politically. I don't know. Are you voting for Biden?
Neither do I at this point. I don't know which party I fit into anymore.
I wouldn't say I've been following you religiously. So I get little bits and pieces of it here. I think you're concerned about a lot of the things we all are, everybody's concerned about, right? I mean, the virus, for example.
I am concerned that we are not solutions-based and evidence-based and running experiments to solve problems, and that this, everything is name-calling and tribalism, and really no focus on expertise or data or even testing things. And the fact that you can't change your mind is also a very weird thing that I don't understand about politics. Like, in the face of new evidence, in the face of an experiment failing, well, why not try something, right? And if you look at whatever problem it is, like censorship on Twitter, the New York Post story, I'm super interested to hear what you think of if a publication like the New York Post prints a story that maybe nobody else would print, and then they don't let you tweet the URL. Yeah. That seemed like very blunt in terms of like a way to...
I don't think that worked, honestly.
That didn't work at all. I mean, they changed it immediately. What's the more elegant way when you have a story like that, do you think?
I don't think there is an elegant way. I actually got caught in that. I was retweeting that. I was, I have a link blog that's part of my, regular blog. And so I was actually publishing that link. So it would go to Twitter, it'd go to my feed, wherever else. And I got the message saying, we're not going to let you retweet that one. I mean, it didn't occur to me that people shouldn't read it. It's like almost like the Streisand effect kicked in right there, because they made it more important because they were blocking it. It was the first time they did that. But I don't envy them one bit, and I don't claim that I have the right answers on any of this stuff. I mean, they bought a huge problem, and I wouldn't want that problem for anything. I think Jack is kind of a hero for willing to take that on. I think people vilify Facebook a lot more than they deserve. I think a lot of that responsibility belongs to journalism, honestly, because, all the information about what Facebook allowed was available, I think, in 2010 or 2011, 10 years ago. They set up the Open Graph and all the APIs for it. It was all out in the open. They could have learned it. They could have asked anybody. I mean, I think journalism has a responsibility to understand technology.
With SendPro Online from Pitney Bowes, you can simply print postage stamps and shipping labels even when you're working remotely. Work from home is the thing, right? We're all here working from home, and you need to send things, well, for as low as $4.99 a month. You'll have access to discounts of up to 40% off USPS Priority Mail. That Priority Mail is amazing. I use it myself. Now you can save up to 62% off on all UPS daily rates. Plus, for being a This Week in Startups listener, you'll receive a free 30-day trial to get started and a free 10-pound scale to ensure you never overpay. Print shipping labels and stamps, even when you're working remotely. Save up to 62% off that UPS second day air service. Schedule package pickups and track shipments from departure to arrival. And you'll save 5 cents on every first class letter and up to 40% on USPS Priority Mail. Starting at just $4.99 a month, you're also going to be able to calculate that postage online, get access to the mobile app, and ship and track packages wherever you're sending them. Of course, you can print this from your own PC and avoid trips to the post office. Go to pb.com/twist to access this special offer for a free 30-day trial, plus that free 10-pound scale when you get started.
I don't think they get off on that one. I think they have, I noticed the Times has, I can't remember, what's this, Donald McNeil. So incredibly knowledgeable person about pandemics and viruses. And, you know, whenever he's writes an article, he does one every few weeks, I stop everything and sit down and read it because I know there's going to be information in there that makes a difference. So they've got somebody in there who understands the technology of viruses. Why don't they have somebody in there who understands the technology of social networks? But they are like all over the map. I mean, I've watched Rachel Maddow do a rant for 15, 20 minutes. And I love Rachel Maddow, but I was very disappointed to see this because she was ranting about Facebook. There was no substance to anything she was saying. But boy, did she make it sound insidious or pernicious, to use your word. I mean, it made me question everything else. Every other time she gets into that mode where she's painting something as being really dark and evil, it made me wonder, does she really understand this? Or, you know, even worse, she does understand it and she's just decided. I think there's a lot of that to the press response to Facebook. You know, is that we've just decided to do a little bit of deflection here because they screwed up the 2016 election, not Facebook. Journalism screwed that up.
How did it screw it up? Just by covering
Hillary's emails
incessantly.
And it's all come out now. There was this book called Clinton Cash, written by a Republican consultant, and they figured this would work, and it did. And they dangled this out in front of the New York Times, and they thought it was fascinating, and they ran with it. Said, oh, there's something to her emails. She screwed up something here, you know?
Yeah.
Well, come on. I mean, I'm sure. No, she didn't screw up anything. That should have been dispensed with in 5 minutes. Yet it dragged out, and it determined the course that we're on right now. You know, you want to find responsibility for 220,000 Americans dead. Some of that has to go to the New York Times. Actually, you know, let's say, be honest, all of it does. Because without that, Trump would not have gotten elected.
Ah, I see.
We still would have had the problem with the susceptible population that's susceptible to a Trump, right? I mean, but we wouldn't actually have Trump.
What do you think of the algorithm's role in all of this? The fact that if something is incendiary or, you know, evokes strong emotion in a person or maybe plays to their worst instincts, it's going to get a reaction. It's going to get engagement, and the like button and the favorite button and the retweet button. This all is something for you to do in this arcade slot machine of Twitter, Facebook, social media. And that algorithm doesn't favor a rational discussion. You write something completely rational. People are like, okay, that's rational. There's no reason to favor it or retweet it. Right.
That's why the people who rise to the top in the podcast world are people who deal in raw emotion, right? And the really good stuff, well, luckily that can still happen because there's nobody that controls what gets published in this world. But it's still most of what because people tune into this stuff because they want the emotion.
So they want that dopamine hit. They want to feel that rage.
Also, they want to feel, you know what they want more than anything, in my opinion, is they want meaning in their life. They want not necessarily that their life has meaning. That's a hard one, but have a little meaning in my life. And that's where the tribalism comes from. It's like the real problem is that people don't have anything to do.
Yeah. I mean, it does fill. I mean, if you think about how, and we see what happens when it fills up too much, which is you have this derangement on both sides of the aisle. And now even taking up the middle where everybody's like, this roller coaster is never ending. Like, who wants to live in a perpetual state of being aghast or being enraged or being depressed about the state of the world?
Right.
I mean, I'm exhausted this year.
Especially when we're in the middle of a pandemic and that people are dying and all of our lives suck now, right?
Oh, yeah. So brutal.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and yet, I wrote this thing. It's like, it's suicidal in my opinion. I have to say this because it is just plain old suicidal to vote for Trump. It just is. I mean, we're not doing anything about about the virus. So if you want to continue doing nothing about the virus, then you vote for Trump. And that's suicidal. Yeah. That's suicide. You're going to die from that.
Well, I mean, and I'm not saying Cuomo in New York State is perfect, but the fact that he decided every day, I'm going to show the numbers.
Yeah.
And every day I'll start with the numbers and I'll talk about our response. And I'm going to put myself out there to answer questions every day. And I'm not going to deflect and blame other people. Right. I'm just going to talk about where we're at. Even though New York got hit really hard, at least you had the sense that somebody was confronting reality.
No, I'll go one step further. He was masterful. Yeah. He was masterful. He provided the demo of what leadership can do. I often had emotional reactions to what he was doing. When I first heard his press conferences, I was telling everybody, look, there's hope. Yeah. We're not necessarily getting flushed down the toilet here, I mean, it was at a moment when you could cry for the United States. I mean, you go into the supermarket. This was a moment. You go into the supermarket, you see all the empty shelves. And you go, how the hell did this happen to the United States of America? This is what you see when you go to a third world country, as you go in there and it hits you. I've had this happen. It's like, go in there. Why are their shelves empty? And then you start to realize that you've got you're living embedded in this incredible system that you don't even think about, and how much it's doing for you and how much of an advantage we have in the United States. And we're just like pissing it all away right now. For what? I don't get it, but it's
very strange. And it's also like the thing I don't understand is the testing. I've been talking to people in other countries and rapid testing for $2, $15, $10. Anybody can get tested anytime they want. You can get at-home kits. You could have a party, get tested before everybody comes in, and then have a little bubble at your own house, just like the, NBA had their bubble or movie sets have their bubble. And if everybody did what the NBA did and you start making little bubbles, eventually that bubble would go from being Bay Ridge to being, South Jersey to being New Jersey to being the tri-state area. You could just build this little bubble up and up and up. And then you could actually test and trace, or do the trace part because you're doing the testing part, and you would eventually beat this thing, which other countries have done exactly that playbook. And we're the greatest country in the world, and we couldn't rally and marshal
we could have
testing.
Done it. Right. Yeah. No, first of all, what the NBA did was incredibly impressive and surprising. And if we had talked, before they did that, I would have said, there's no way it's going to work. They're never going to pull it off. But they did. They totally did. And it's amazing that they did. And then other countries had an advantage that we didn't have, which is they had been through SARS and we hadn't. So, we had for whatever reason, we kept it contained in the United States. So we didn't have the cultural experience. They didn't have it in Europe either, but they had it in Asia. And, I have a friend who lives in Vietnam, and the experience from his point of view, he was, documented the whole thing on Facebook while they were locking down. And I was, shocked at the whole concept of a lockdown, but they got it under control. And I don't think they actually had any deaths in Vietnam at all. And it's not a small country. It's 93 million people. And And they were, okay, so they're not the United States. They don't have the same freedoms we do, maybe. But yeah, we could have done much, much better, and we should have. And we're not that bad a country. We haven't slid that far. We could get out of this if we placed some value on getting out of it. The problem is
some coordination from the top down. This seems like one of these problems that you can't solve on a strictly local level. You have to have a coordinated response to it, and maybe just the operating system of the United States isn't built for this.
No, it is. We just happen to have the most incompetent president we've ever had.
Yeah, that might be the other piece.
At the moment we needed leadership, we had no leadership. Obama could have done this. I think George W. Bush was an awful president, but I think he could have done it too.
Yeah, no, he would have.
Yeah, he might have been paralyzed at first and confused and whatever, but he would have listened to the people around him. They'd said, look, we have the playbook for this. We know exactly what to do. You get up right now and you give this speech, and we know that 67% of the people will believe you because we simulated this, and we know that it's going to happen, and people just didn't believe it, or who knows?
Yeah, it is.
You want to know, Jason? I'll tell you what. I think it's we've been doing this to ourselves a lot. We had the Iraq War, and we had tax cuts during the Iraq War. Now that's immoral, and that is part of the problem. We just don't think anything can fuck us up. I don't know if you're allowed to say words like this on the.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good.
Fuck it. Yeah, fuck it.
I don't like to say it a lot, but I think fuck us up is the word, okay, or the phrase, is that we just don't believe anything bad can happen to us in the United States. It's like what I was talking about before, about not realizing that there's a reason the shelves are always stocked in our stores. It took a lot to get us to that place. We have the ability to print the only currency everybody wants. I mean, we never have to run out of money.
The way we work together has changed overnight, and if there's one thing we've learned, it's that having access to the right resources is essential for adapting your business. 2020 has been full of uncertainty, and businesses need to plan accordingly. Finding the right talent can be time-consuming, it's frustrating, and it's expensive, and that's where Fiverr can help. It's a marketplace that connects businesses with freelancers, and those freelancers offer hundreds of digital services that you need right now for your startup: graphic design, copywriting, web programming, film editing, all the stuff you need to get done. Whether you're launching your first business, scaling your current one, or you need extra support, Fiverr is here to help. You can search by the service, you can search by deadline, price, reviews, and more. You'll know exactly what you're going to pay up front. There are no negotiations. And they have amazing 24-hour, 7-day-a-week customer service and a network of quality talent. We've used Fiverr so many times at launch, and it's been so effective for us. Sometimes we need to pop up a website. Other times we need to do research and find contacts in different countries or different verticals. Fiverr has always been there to help us. Fiverr.com, Fiverr.com. And when you check out, use the promo code TWIST. So on checkout, TWIST gets you 10% off. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. Do you still believe in capitalism? There seems to be this undercurrent of things are getting too big.
I saw you writing about that. Yeah. I don't believe there is such a thing as capitalism. I don't believe in this world that we live in at the level that we live. I think that the romantic notion of capitalism worked when we had an agrarian society, when we didn't have any medicine, when there were, connections between all of the different cities and countries. And I mean, once you have medicine, how can you have capitalism? Think about it. Medicine just doesn't submit to capitalism.
How so? I'm not sure I follow.
Okay. I mean, is it something, do I have to have like $10 million in the bank to get cancer treatment? Or could I get the cancer treatment just because I have cancer? That's a fundamental question. Mm-hmm. Well, what's the answer?
I think today you would get the cancer treatment, right?
Well, I'm not asking about today, but what's the right moral question? Yes.
Oh, the moral question. Yeah, I mean, it does seem like in a society that is this wealthy and has achieved this level of sustainability and is sort of, you were sort of saying we live in this system where we take it for granted. We take for granted that K through 12 or pre-K through 12 exists. We take for granted that unemployment exists or food stamps, welfare, whatever, safety nets there are here. And obviously some other countries have slightly better and most countries have much worse. Yeah, it would seem to me that in a developed country, having a basic healthcare system is an absolute no-brainer. And why wouldn't we strive to have that?
That's it. Why wouldn't you? Why not? Yeah. Right? We can do it. Yeah. We have medicine. Why should that be something that we can, but on the other hand, we should have rewards for ingenuity, for hard work, for being right. Being right should have a lot of rewards with it. And our system isn't really well set up for that, honestly. My life story has a lot of being right in it and not being rewarded for it. I mean, that's...
Yeah, well, I mean, you did work in open source, which is, you kind of gifted people a lot of your ideas, right? So, I mean, it was pretty philanthropic, a lot of the work you did.
It never was intended to be philanthropic.
Oh, okay.
I'm a software developer, entrepreneur. I like to think of even the open formats and protocols that I put out there. I like to think of those things as products too.
Yeah.
And so for example, when RSS took off, then I don't know, what year was that? In 2003, somewhere in there.
Yeah, 2003, 2004. I mean, whenever Technorati kind of clicked, that was when it came into a lot of people's consciousness, or
maybe a few months before that. Right. And so I'm meeting with all the VCs. Okay. They all want to meet with me because look at this thing. What's going on? This is the guy that knows everything about it. So I meet with them. Right. And I'm figuring we're talking about setting up companies, but no, they're talking about setting up companies without me.
Right.
And none of it, by the first time I ever hear about there being actual dedicated RSS startups is I read press releases, and it's like, good Lord. Why do you do business like this? I mean, first, if you're going to fuck me, why don't you at least call me and tell me that you're fucking me? And why would you want to fuck me? The point is the people that they hired, I don't want to the people they hired knew nothing about it. They knew absolutely nothing. And the same thing happened again with podcasting, and nobody knew what to do. I don't know that for a fact that I knew what to do, but nobody did what I wanted to do. And nobody even listened to me. And they gave $25 million to Adam Curry's startup. The guys at Kleiner, who were supposedly friends of mine, they did call me before they did the deal. And they asked me, what's the situation? I said, the situation is I have a deal with Adam that I get 50% of whatever he gets. And you know what? Jason, you influenced me very heavily on this. You said, if you're going to do a deal with somebody, you really should write a contract up. I remember you saying that, and I'm going, yeah, I've learned that lesson.
Well, I mean, if it's anything is worth doing, it's worth doing right, is what somebody explained to me.
That's right.
Yeah, because somebody explained this to me, and they were like, do you have a contract? I was like, no, we just agreed. And
if they don't want to do a contract, you should get the fuck out of there, okay?
I actually have another perception of it, which is, now that I've become an angel investor, and you mentioned angel investing in your tweets today, I realize that it's being one of the worst possibilities in an outcome is being too early, because it's almost like the people who get there too early, the audience isn't ready. And you said the first 4 years, we just had to get people to believe they could use this technology for podcasting. And it really takes that. There's this walk through the desert, right? Going from, the East Coast to the West Coast, there's this huge, barren desert, and then maybe the Donner Pass and snow. And then all of a sudden you get to California. And I feel like if you're starting and you're those people who are the pioneers, you kind of wind up dying somewhere in Arizona or in the middle of the desert. And then it's the people who start maybe after the Donner Trail or whatever, who pick up and say, you know what, I found California here, or here's the oil in Texas, or here's the gold in California.
Yes, I know that that's true, but but I don't accept that for my own experience in these situations. I mean, it's water under the bridge. Look, I've made a lot of money. I'm not complaining. Money isn't an issue here. What I wanted to do and didn't get to do was to build a development organization according to my values without the kinds of limits I had the first time around. I mean, I mentioned I did an angel-based company, and my angel, this guy was named Bill Jordan, and I would guess he was probably about my age when I first met him. I'd totally given up on any form of investment. I was so tired of meeting with the VCs. At a little office on San Antonio Road in Palo Alto, and I had one person working with me, and this guy, Bill Jordan, wanted to meet with us, and I said, "No, you meet with him. I don't want to talk. I'm just going to write code. I'm going to go do my thing, And my partner comes in and he puts a check down on the table for $50,000. He says he really would like to talk to you. And I thought, okay, this does it. I'm going to talk. And it was that kind of relationship. I mean, it was very collegial. I love the idea. When it works, it's wonderful, the angel investment stuff. So
what was your idea with him? I'm curious.
That was Think Tank. Think Tank was a long story on that one, but there's a company called Living Videotext, started in 81. And before that, I had been a developer at Personal Software, which is the company that did VisiCalc.
Wow.
Yeah.
So VisiCalc, for people who don't know, was Lotus 1-2-3 before Mitch Kapor did it. And certainly Excel long before Mitch Kapor and VisiCalc.
And I worked for Mitch Kapor. Mitch Kapor was, I was an author. I had a contract with them. I wasn't an employee, but they paid me and I had a percentage, it's a really long story, but yeah, I knew all those guys. And then, we started a company around the product, and it didn't go very well until that moment. And then things started clicking. And we ended up merging with Symantec, and that's how I hooked up with the Kleiner guys. And because it was really, I did the deal with John Doerr, and I asked him at one point, instead of buying me out, would you fund me? And he said, no, we're not going to do that. See, the problem is they never understood. I don't think, I'm not an easy thing for them to understand, because the world thinks that programmers are fungible and uncreative and not leaders and all kinds of very negative.
That seems to have changed from that period of time.
Do you think so? I don't know if it has.
I think it's, I think Y Combinator does get credit, Paul Graham, for saying we're going to invest in developers and they're going to be the tip of the spear.
Y Combinator I would say net is a positive thing. I always thought that incubators were a good idea. I really did. I wrote about it when they were out of fashion. I said, we shouldn't give up on them so quickly because developers need help, and if you can, take some of the functions of running a company and, factor them out so that you don't have to reinvent them for every single company. That's a good idea, But
venture capital has changed a lot too. If you think about who the venture capitals were in those early days.
No, I don't think so, because you know what? I don't think we're trying out any of the big ideas, to be honest with you. I think what you're getting is a lot of derivative products that are, the Foursquare of tire changing, or the Uber of, I don't know how many. I saw this when I was at NYU. When was that? 2010 to 2011, somewhere in there. And they were starting up their own incubator sort of thing. And I was in the journalism school there. And so I was on their network. And the students would come to me and they say, I want to come up with a great idea so I can be the next Zuckerberg. I go, well, that's ass backwards. Why? You can't be the next Zuckerberg. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Whatever. I think that you want people that try really big, weird ideas. And I think that VCs are never going to do that, because VCs are bankers, and that's how they look at the world. And they need a bankable idea.
Yeah, they are definitely looking for things that can. They're looking to take the risk out and have a clear path to whatever amount of revenue and a clear path to an exit and scale, and really outlandish ideas. You can get a lot of egg on your face from them.
Let me ask you this. How outlandish would it be for a guy who was a 2-time entrepreneur, both times successful, has now created this thing called, not personally created RSS, but made it happen? Why shouldn't he get a chance to start an RSS company? Why did that business decide that person couldn't do that? And I've never understood it. I don't think the quality of the people they replaced me with their result was predictable. These were people who didn't understand what they were doing. There haven't been any technology-based podcasting startups. I can't think of any. I mean, there have been some individual efforts that have been good, but there should have been an early on podcasting startup. And
yeah, it's interesting, the technology being so standardized and open. You really, it never became one person's domain, right? You had Zencaster handling recording, or Libsyn handling hosting and RSS feeds.
It should have all been one thing. It should have been, there should be, I mean, still to this day, iPhones are not good podcasting devices.
No, that is interesting. Yeah, they suck at it.
I might be even too late to do this. And I don't want to go into tremendous detail on it, but the story there is an interesting one, because I went all around to all the different places that could have had a stake in this, and technology companies, like, all of them. And then none of them were curious about what were the dimensions of this new medium. I don't think they still are. I don't think they're curious about it,
Yeah, it kind of snuck up on them, I think. Like, they were all behind the users on this one, which is similar to the blogging moment, where it was so user-driven and so talent-driven that the big companies, by the time they tried to capture it, it was already independent and sustainable.
Well, but the same thing with the VCs. They reacted just like the big companies.
Yeah.
So, Jason, why don't you, listen, I
take the pitch right now. Yeah.
No, because I want to be, a friendship to me is an active thing,
Yeah.
I want to be friends. So let's, and we have always been friends, but.
Yeah, I think so. I've always looked at you as like an inspiration, like, maybe not a mentor, but just somebody who I looked at and go, wow, just everything he does, keep an eye on, because there's so many nuggets of wisdom there as he
Let me tell you the equivalent for coming back from me.
Yeah.
I know you struggled a lot, and you had huge ups and downs through your career, but I think it was always clear what you wanted to do. I always had a pretty good idea, and it's what you're doing right now. Yeah. So, hats off to you. It didn't just come to you, right?
No, it's 20 years.
You had to keep throwing yourself up against the wall, get bloodied, go lick your wounds, and then come back and try it again. The people that hit the first time, that's luck, but.
Yeah, it's pretty rare.
What you've done is remarkable and admirable and should be taught. People should have that as an example.
It's very kind of you to say. They did a case study on me at Stanford, which was bizarre to read because I would never get into Stanford, business school. And they literally did, Jeffrey Pfeiffer, the professor over there, did one on my ability to network and build a network of people to then, drive success in the future. And it's worked out. But
you just raised the next question, because I saw you asked about universities. How can we use universities in technology? Didn't you ask about that?
Yeah, it does seem to me like
it needs another look, and
it definitely needs another look for sure.
And I've been thinking about that. I have the same story. Harvard never would have accepted me as a student. Right. I didn't come close to getting into Harvard. But later in my career, I knocked on their door and I said, I'd love to do some stuff here. And they said yes. So, it's there. You were
a fellow at
But what's funny about it is that they've never tried to correct that. They've never done a case study as well, why are we writing case studies about Jason Calacanis, but we never would let him in as a student?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about what the acceptance criteria is, it's certainly not like underperforming, but potential and grit. It's not. That's really why I think entrepreneur is special, because it favors people of action and grit and resiliency, and the things that maybe testing and getting great grades in an academic setting don't optimize for, right?
No, that's conforming.
They kind of optimize for conformity.
That's correct. There are people who conform, and I suppose there's a lot of value to that too. But I mean, you described my situation. I was, through high school, was always on the verge of getting kicked out. They didn't think I was very special in college, or in grad school for that matter. And then, whatever. They never thought I was that special in Silicon Valley either. It's weird, but wouldn't it be great if Silicon Valley lived up to its promise? Because I don't think it does. And I left there. I just didn't want to be there,
Yeah, money does change things. I mean, the scope of Silicon Valley has just gotten so big now, and the number of companies being invested in. So I see both sides of it. More people are being funded for more divergent backgrounds and places than ever before. So the New York tech scene, the Austin tech scene, the Salt Lake City, the Los Angeles tech scene, obviously Seattle's been going for a while, have really started to become places where the VCs here are like, I got to get to Stockholm, I got to get to Austin, I got to get to Miami and find the companies there. Australia, even with Canva and Atlassian, people are like, wow, Australian entrepreneurs are dope. So I kind of feel like the code of Silicon Valley got cracked and just got distributed everywhere, and everybody's got like kind of the recipe and the playbook now. It's kind of like nukes, right? Like people got there first, and then a bunch of people got the recipe and were like, oh, I can make a nuke. Yeah, how long does that take? A decade or two? Great. I'm going to start my nuclear program and build my bombs until like somebody pumped the brakes on it. Maybe a bad analogy. Did you ever, I'm curious about some of the old days, because you were there for a lot of this. Did you ever meet and spend time with Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and that group?
Yeah.
And what were they like, when they were young, in the 80s, when they were in their 30s or 40s? What was that time period like?
Well, by the time I got there, I got there in the fall of 1979. And my first call was Apple. I mean, I had come there from, I was living in Madison, Wisconsin, and where I had gone to grad school. And I had developed two products. One was a relational database, and the other was an outliner, which is what I eventually made my career on, the first version of my career. And I wanted to hook up with somebody to publish it. I didn't want to start a company. And so I had some sales background. I have to keep this very abbreviated because it's a long story. But yeah, I did meet with Steve Jobs. And he said,
to pitch him on an outliner. And this is like the year before they went public.
He didn't want the outliner. He wanted the database. And and I told him, you should want the outliner. That's the product for you. I mean, you've got the outliner machine here, and this fucking machine is never going to run a database. Come on, get real. I mean,
this is like Apple II days,
this
or
was
Apple
II,
I days?
Right? The Apple II had just come out with the floppy drive. And you know how much data could fit on the floppy drive?
Wow, is it 360K?
140K. 140K. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was per side, right? So if you clipped it and flipped it over?
No, I think that was both sides. I don't know how they did it.
That was both sides?
I was never whatever. You never flipped the disk over. Nobody ever did that. Yeah. So he said, well, basically fuck off. And I said, you got any recommendations on where I could go from here? And he said, well, you could go to this company. We just turned down their product. And it was VisiCalc. So.
Right.
But that was, I think they made a mistake in turning down the outliner, but they definitely made a mistake in turning down VisiCalc. And I guess they thought nobody would want to do that on the Apple II. And when I met with them, they they were actually looking for an outliner. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful world. You develop a weird product completely out of left field, and then you go to Silicon Valley and they want it, and, whatever. And, so that was my one. I mean, you have to understand, even at that time, Steve Jobs was a icon and famous, and, it was off-putting. And I got into an argument with him, but it still was off-putting. And, so then a couple of years later, more than a couple of years later, you'd meet, Bill Gates was quite accessible. He would go to conferences and you could, talk with him.
Yeah, no, he would sit at lunch. I mean, I remember in the PC Forum days, he was just there hanging out. He'd have lunch. He'd sit and say, "Hey guys, what's up?"
Yeah, and he gave a talk at Roger Von Eck had a conference at Ricky's Hyatt House, which has been torn down since then, and he talked about. They have a very visionary speech about creating modules of software and tying them together with a scripting language. It's just what Frontier was. It's what I ended up developing much later. But and so I was really impressed. And then I started making trips to Microsoft. I mean, that was and they were I actually really liked Microsoft. I have to say that, I mean, they were, I don't know. I always actually like they were red meat eaters, They didn't screw around. And when they were small, they weren't, I didn't feel that they were dangerous. And I always loved working with them. And they actually tried to buy my company. They were the first. Userland? No, Living Video Text. And
Living Video Text, yeah.
That was in, I'm going to say 87. And we had a letter of intent. And had the deal gone through, we would have been their first acquisition. And
wow.
Yeah, the value of the deal went from 10 million to 20 million while we were in due diligence. And because they had just gone public and the stock was going up multiples. But we didn't have the product that they wanted. And they figured it out. What they wanted was PowerPoint. And we pioneered presentation software on the Mac, but PowerPoint came along and was,
I forgot that they bought PowerPoint they bought it for $14 million.
And so PowerPoint was going to go to Symantec and we were going to go to Microsoft. And then Microsoft, I got a call from Frank Gaudet, who is, I think, a Queens guy. And he was an older guy, really nice. And he had, his theme was, "We're going to love you into this company, Dave. You're just going to love it here." And I was actually really excited. I'd get turned on at some of these meetings. So really, it's like, whatever. And he said, "Bill's going to call you in a few minutes and you're not going to like it." And that's what happened. So I ended up selling to Symantec, and I ended up I was the largest shareholder in Symantec after that deal. And then couple of years later, we went public. And yeah, I would see Bill Gates every time I'd go up to Microsoft. I would go in and hang out with him in his office and we'd shoot the shit. We were having, I don't know if you ever heard about the TSR wars. It was
TSR wars? No.
Yeah. Oh, it was a huge deal. There was a product called Sidekick from Borland.
Oh, I had Sidekick on my computer. It was like the first little set of apps. You had Post-it notes, a calendar.
TSRs. Task manager. That's what they were called. TSR. And TSR stood for Terminate and Stay Resident. And,
yes, I now remember that term. That was I remember in my DOS days, you would load it up and you could use a quick key to pop it up.
Yep. That's it.
And it was like a precursor to having Windows or task management.
Well, it was the poor man's version of it. It was like what you could do with DOS before we got to, multitasking computers. It was beautiful. Philippe Kahn, total visionary, real character, and at that time, kind of an asshole, to be honest with you. So we followed in and had the number 2 product in that market called Ready, which was a Terminate and Stay Resident outliner. And every time when we shipped, they changed their product so that they would knock us out of memory. They didn't want us in there. Yeah, I thought you would like that, right? Because it's like
that is so hardcore.
I had a guy working for me, Bob Bierman, who loved that. So he would come out with a workaround. We'd ship a new version, and then they would knock that one out. I guess they kind of thought we were a virus, whatever. You know, it was kind of flattering. So after that, I went up to Seattle and hung out and went to see Bill Gates, and I pleaded with him to put something in the operating system. This was MS-DOS that would arbitrate this, so we could then say, okay, you know, it would have been a tiny little, we were willing to give him the code, Jason, you know. He said, oh no, we've got this great new OS coming out real soon now, and you should just wait for that. And that was OS 2. It's like, oh great. You know, it's like, this is, by the way, a pattern in tech. This happens all the time, is that people think, oh, the next thing, it's going to be this radical, everybody's going to want to install it right away, and it's going to solve all the problems. I believe he was sincere in that. I don't think he got any pleasure out of that. Because, and that was also called RAM cram, and it was hitting the 640K limit. And then all of that extra memory was going to Lotus, right? Because that's what everybody was running. And it was just a complete mess. And it just needed a little bit of management from anybody. IBM could have done it. Microsoft could have done it. And they didn't do it. And that was, and that, I mean, I don't know if they would agree, but I think that was the end of MS-DOS because it hit that wall and it didn't manage it very well. And the same thing happened with Windows. I don't know, what was it? 12, 15 years later, somewhere in there, with the malware on Windows. They never did anything about that, and they could have done something. I don't think the Mac was inherently better than Windows. I just think that Mac didn't have the malware, and that's why everybody went to it, you know?
Yeah. It is, it's crazy to think about those days when being able to just load something from memory and not have to reload it, right, is, like an incredible innovation at that time.
I wouldn't say innovation is the right word. I think that everybody knew it could be done. Even the users knew it could be done. But it was a relief. It'd be kind of like when Trump doesn't win. If Trump doesn't win, that'll be a big relief. It won't be an innovation, though, right?
Right.
Because we had that problem solved before Trump came along, right? But
what does your gut tell you about the election? I'm curious.
I don't have a gut on that one. I don't. What does your gut tell you? I don't know. I mean, I think that whatever happens is going to be super exciting. And I don't think that's good. I'd prefer super boring. That would be, but there's
I think boring would be good again, because this is taking up too much of my cognitive space.
Exactly.
Like talking about a memory overload and talking about your upper and lower memory being filled. Like having the pandemic fill all these cycles in memory and then having Trump filling it constantly. My thought is that there's this concept of what got you here won't get you there. And what got him into office, I think, was his ability. He's like a media savant, right? Like he's able to make all of the attention come to him. So he's this like attention master. And so because he was able to flood the zone and make everything about himself and get all this press, that got him into office. And then by doing that for 4 years straight, it's exhausted people because every time he does it, he has to be more outrageous, more insane, more outlandish. And I think even some contingent of supporters, they're exhausted. They're just exhausted. And if you exhaust everybody, it's sort of like being the dinner guest who's got like a lot of great stories, but then won't shut up and the stories kind of get less good as they go on. And you're like, that guy was good, or that guy was good for the first part, but they monopolized the conversation too much. I think he's just monopolized our brains too much. Oh yeah.
I felt that before the 2016 election. I mean, whatever. I mean, yes, I agree with you. I mean, that's why I constantly feel burnt out and exhausted. And, it's not just that. It's also the virus that, you just turned 50 or something, right?
I'm turning 50 next month. Yeah.
Oh, you're turning 50 next month, right? So I'm 15 years older. I just turned 65. Right. So, I mean, I think, but we're both in this situation where you're really really want to survive this, and I really do, I would say my prime thing is that, I'm willing to hang out for a while until we get this. And I think I think next year, this time, if we get rid of Trump, if we don't get rid of Trump, I don't think we have a future. But if we get rid of him by this year, next time, no matter how fucked up things are, we'll be out of this mess. Yeah.
I would agree with that. I felt like we would be out of this by now, or at least have it controlled, because we'd be testing, 5-10 million people a day. We've only gotten to 1 million.
That's the functional America you're talking about. That's the one that acts rationally, that we used to be, that we grew up in,
And do we have this whatever that military authority is, where you can take an emergency authority and tell any company to build anything and get on it?
The Defense Production Act.
Yeah. What happened to that? We built 10,000 ventilators and then we stopped.
Right.
Why didn't we stop and say, hey, Elon, hey, GE, hey, everybody?
Because Trump is not actually a president. He plays a president. He's an actor who plays a president. He isn't actually a president.
And then who do you put in charge of this? Who's in charge of it now? Fauci, Pence, Jared? Who's in charge? Nobody.
We could have been creative about this. We could have made him an offer probably before he took office and said, look, we're going to hire somebody to actually be president, and you can be the pretend president. You can have all the trappings, you can live in the White House, you can hang out with whoever you want to, and you can steal lots of money. In fact, we'll just give you the money. Okay.
Yeah. Here's $1 billion. Just
it would have been a good deal. It would have been a good deal.
Would have been cheaper than the $5 trillion we're going to spend on what? I don't know. Saving every company that shut down during this?
Okay, now you're getting me depressed.
Well, I mean, how much would it have taken if we poured $5 trillion into this? How much would it have taken to just get the testing up and running? You couldn't spend.
It's not the money. It's not the money. They have the money allocated. No. Money's already allocated.
It's execution.
They just won't spend it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is bonkers to me. It's so bonkers.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we survive. I agree with you. I don't know if we survive a second term. I think they got to just give him the pardon right now and be like, listen, bow out. Here's the pardon. We know you did a bunch of criminal shit. We know that it's all dirty. Here, everything's done. No taxes, your whole family, no IRS audit. Just get the fuck out of here, dude, and stop causing chaos. It's too much chaos.
I'd sign off on that. Yeah. Yeah.
Got to be some. I mean, I when I saw him in some of these debates and some of these rallies, I get the sense he doesn't want to be in the job anymore.
He never wanted to be in the job.
Right. But I think he really doesn't want to be in the job now.
There's this wonderful scene in the Batman movie with Heath Ledger as the Joker.
Yeah.
And the guy with the half of his face blown off. I forget his
Two-Face.
What's his name?
Two-Face.
No, maybe he is. I don't know. This isn't that movie though. And so he mentions the plan that the Joker has. And the Joker goes into the speech, but you think I have a plan? I'm like the dog that caught the car. I don't know what to do. I just do things. That's what he says,
Yeah.
And he talks about the people who do have plans, and they're all the, Mitch McConnell and Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, whatever. They have plans, but I don't have plans. I just do things.
Harvey Dent.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Say again?
I think Harvey Dent, who is the guy.
It was Harvey Dent.
He becomes Two-Face eventually when he becomes a supervillain later comics. And then he flips the coin to determine your fate. Is kind of his. Oh,
you see, I didn't see the follow-on movie because, whatever.
I don't think they ever really fully developed the character. But yes, it does seem like he is Heath Ledger. Some men just want to see the world burn, I think is what Alfred tells him.
He actually seemed kind of sympathetic in that moment. He wanted to be friends with this guy, and this guy wouldn't be friends with him. I mean, who doesn't like somebody who wants to be friends with everybody, right? I mean, that's good.
In a way, that's kind of Trump's thing. He's a narcissist, right? He just wants everybody to love him.
He does. And if we had been sophisticated enough to respond to him that way, we could have possibly avoided some of this. You know where this idea came from is that apparently he made that proposal to Kasich before the election. He said, I'll let you be the president and I'll be in charge of making America great again. That was his proposal. And you know what that means? It means I'm going to go around and give speeches, and you don't have to do anything I say. I'm just going to give the speeches.
Yeah, I go to the rallies.
Yeah. And he's happy, and he's going to lose, and he knows he's going to lose, and he's going to be relieved. But
then the Southern District of New York is going to drop.
I hope they come down really hard.
Mountain of bricks on him. Those Southern District of New York is like a hardcore group of people. Like, they are just not playing games.
So you love New York, don't you?
Oh God, I love it.
Why don't you live in New York?
I'm thinking about coming back. I've really enjoyed my time in California, but I would like to come back and buy the Knicks. That's what I did. That's my long game.
I moved out of Manhattan, though. I don't live in the city anymore. I live up in the Catskills.
It's gorgeous up there.
I have a wonderful place. As a kid. Yeah. Well, when we're over all this stuff, come to New York and come
have dinner again. All right. There you have it, folks. Dave Weiner, legend, inventor, entrepreneur, blogger. Go read scripting.
Jason's
friends. Yeah.
Right on.
All right. So let's stay in touch, Dave, and we'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups.